What happens when America's most unshakable talk show veteran pushes a Hollywood icon one step too far? The answer erupted on live television in a moment so tense, so startling that even the studio audience seemed to forget how to breathe. Before we dive into the moment Rachel McAdams snapped right there under the blinding studio lights of The View, make sure you subscribe. Hit that like button and drop a comment so you never miss these explosive behind-the-scenes confrontations. Now, let's step into the storm. The day began with the kind of deceptive calm that usually hides the most emotional collisions. The View studio was buzzing, the kind of fast-moving backstage energy that feels electric but predictable. Crew adjusting mic packs, producers whispering notes, audience members fanning themselves with cue cards. Joy Behar was in a playful mood, cracking jokes with the warm-up comedian, tossing off one-liners that had the front row giggling. It looked like any other episode. Rachel McAdams arrived quietly, the way she often does, a soft smile, a gentle wave, kind, polite, almost apologetic for taking up space. But beneath that gentleness, there was an unmistakable tension, a conflict she'd carried with her since she signed the contract for this appearance. Her newest film was generating buzz for its raw emotional themes, and she knew the panel would dive hard into the personal parallels between her life and the character she played. She also knew Joy Behar had a reputation for cutting straight into sensitive territory with a grin sharp enough to draw blood while still looking charming. But what no one expected, what no one predicted was that Rachel McAdams, known for her soft-spoken grace, would be the one to erupt. The show began harmlessly enough. Whoopi introduced Rachel with her usual calm authority, the audience applauding with warm recognition. She was the beloved star of The Notebook, Spotlight, Mean Girls, and more. Rachel sat down, smoothing her dress, crossing her legs carefully. But something was off, something in her eyes. They weren't tense, but focused, almost bracing, like she was ready for an impact. Sunany Hostin began with thoughtful, respectful questions. She asked about the emotional weight of the film, the research process, the truth beneath the character. Rachel relaxed. She even laughed. That soft melodic laugh the world loved. Then Joy Behar leaned forward, elbows on the table, her tone deceptively casual. "So Rachel," she said, "you've been pretty private your whole career. Almost mysteriously private, some would say. But this film dives into themes of regret, complicated love, unresolved guilt. I mean, are we seeing the real you up there? Did you pull that from your own messy history?" There it was. The audience made a sound, a faint ooh, soft but pointed. Rachel blinked. A tiny pause, a split-second breath. Sunny turned her head toward Joy as if to silently say, "Really? We're going there immediately." Joy smiled widely, completely confident in her own provocation. Rachel kept her voice level. "I think all actors draw from different experiences, Joy. But I don't think it's fair to assume." Joy cut her off. "Come on, Rachel. We've all heard stories. You dated some interesting men. You disappeared for a while. People want to know what happened. This character feels like a confession." The temperature in the studio rose by several degrees. Even Whoopi leaned back, eyes narrowing with a warning only decades of hosting could communicate. "Joy, pull back before this explodes." Rachel's fingers tightened on the edge of the table. Her breathing changed, just slightly. She didn't smile, didn't laugh. She stared at Joy Behar with a stillness that felt dangerous. "Joy," Rachel said slowly, "I'm here to talk about a film, not to have my life poked at like entertainment. I've always respected your show, but that question was—" Joy interrupted again, waving her hand. "Oh, relax, honey. It's not that serious. We ask everyone this stuff." Rachel's jaw set. A visible shift, subtle, but seismic. The audience leaned forward collectively, sensing the crack forming in real time. She spoke again, this time firmer. "I'm not honey, and I'm not relaxing when you're making assumptions about my personal life on national television." A low rumble broke out in the audience. Not boos, not cheers, but the sound of hundreds of people reacting at once. Unsure which direction this would go. Joy raised her eyebrows, almost amused. "Well, excuse me, but you know how this works. You show up here, we talk about the real stuff. If you wanted softballs, you should have gone to a late-night show." Whoopi's hand dropped onto the table with a soft thump. Not a slam, but enough to signal, "Joy, you're playing with fire." Rachel leaned forward now. Asking about emotional themes in a film is fair. Dragging out rumors about my personal life is not real. Joy, it's invasive. Joy smirked.
Why?
Because maybe there's a truth in there you don't want to talk about. The audience gasped audibly loudly. A ripple of shock rolled through the studio. Rachel's face tightened, not with anger at first, but hurt. Deep, genuine hurt. She exhaled slowly, eyes flicking toward Whoopi for a moment, almost looking for an escape route. But then something hardened in her. The hurt sharpened, became fuel. "Do you enjoy this?" she asked Joy, voice trembling with controlled intensity. "Do you enjoy trying to embarrass people to get a headline?" Joy looked taken back just for a moment before she laughed a short, dismissive laugh. "Oh, please don't make yourself a victim. Nobody is attacking you." Rachel shook her head. "You attacked me the moment you implied my work is some kind of accidental therapy session." Joy fired back instantly. "Well, maybe it is. Nothing wrong with that." Rachel leaned in, eyes aflame now. "No," she said, her voice low and cutting. "What's wrong is using someone's vulnerability as entertainment. You think because you've been on TV for decades, you get to cross any boundary you want and hide behind humor, but you don't. Not with me." The audience erupted. Some clapping, some gasping, some covering their mouths in disbelief. Joy's expression snapped from amused to annoyed. The shift so sudden it was almost jarring. "You know what? This is why some actors shouldn't come on panel shows. Too sensitive. Too precious." Sunny looked stunned. Whoopi closed her eyes, rubbing her temples. Rachel's voice rose, not yelling, but sharp, resonant, unwavering. "If defending my boundaries makes me precious, then fine. I'll be precious, but I won't let you belittle me on live television and then pretend it's a joke." Joy threw her hands up. "Oh, get over yourself." Rachel froze. The studio froze with her. Her face shifted from anger to disbelief, then finally to something fierce and final. She stood up. The audience gasped again. "Don't tell me to get over myself," she said quietly. "Dangerously. Not after you dragged me on your show and tried to turn my personal life into a punchline." Joy opened her mouth to respond, but whatever she was about to say never made it out. Rachel stepped back from the table, microphone still clipped to her dress, her breath shaky, but her posture strong. "I came here to talk about art. You came here to poke at wounds. That's not conversation. That's cruelty wrapped in comedy." And with that, she took another step away from the table, her chair skidding slightly behind her. Sunny whispered, "Oh my God!" On a hot mic, Whoopi reached out her hand as if to stop Rachel. But Rachel wasn't stopping. The cameras caught everything. The trembling breath, the shine in her eyes, the audience on the edge of their seats. In Joy Behar. For the first time in the entire segment, she looked stunned. Rachel turned toward the backstage exit, but she didn't leave. Not yet. Instead, she turned back to Joy with a final piercing stare. A stare that would replay across social media for days. "This isn't journalism, Joy," she said. "This is you picking at people until they break. And today, you picked the wrong person." The audience broke into chaotic noise, cheers, gasps, shocked murmurs. The tension was unbearable, electric, cinematic, and that was only the beginning. Rachel didn't walk off. Not yet. But the silence she left hanging in the studio after her last sentence was so heavy, so suffocating that even viewers at home would later describe feeling it from thear couches. Joy Behar sat stiffly, her smile gone, her arms crossed, her expression sharpening into something defensive and irritated. Sunny host stared at the table as if unsure whether intervening would calm the situation or throw gasoline on it. Whoopi Goldberg let out a long, slow breath. The kind of breath a veteran host takes when she knows the next few seconds could define the entire episode. Rachel stepped forward again, returning to the table. But she didn't sit. She stood at the edge, one hand still clutching the back of her chair, shoulders tense. She wasn't backing down. She wasn't storming off. She was standing her ground in front of millions. A murmur swept across the audience like wind through leaves. Whoopi spoke first. Her voice was calm, steady, motherly. Rachel, Joy, we can take a minute. We don't need to push anyone into anything. Joy snorted. Push. I asked a question. That's what we do here. She turned slightly toward the crowd, lifting her arms in a half-shrug. People take things way too personally these days. The audience reacted with a mix of awkward laughs and low disapproving noises. It was clear they weren't buying her casual dismissal. They'd seen the shift. They felt the sting. Rachel's jaw tightened, her fingers slipping from the chair. Joy, you didn't ask a question. You made an implication. A very personal one. Joy met her stare directly. It's a fair point. When actors draw from real life, it's worth asking what that real life looks like. And when did you become the authority on my life? Rachel fired back. Sunny looked up, finally stepping into the conflict. Maybe we should focus on the film for a moment, she suggested gently. But Joy wasn't letting go. Oh, come on, Sunny. Don't you want to know where all that emotion comes from? I mean, the film is practically begging the question. Rachel inhaled deeply, but this time the breath didn't soothe. It fueled. Joy, she said, voice trembling now, not from weakness, but from controlled fury. I worked on this film for months. I dug into emotional places I kept closed for years. I put myself on the line, and the first thing you ask me is whether I'm basically confessing something, whether my performance is just therapy. Joy shrugged again, dismissive. And maybe it is. A lot of actors do that. Then ask them that, Rachel snapped. Don't throw that assumption at me and expect me to laugh along like I don't matter. A wave of applause broke out from a section of the audience, spontaneous, sudden, cutting through the tension like a knife. It wasn't loud enough to feel confrontational, but enough to show where many people stood. Joy smirked. They clap at anything, she muttered under her breath, but the mic picked it up. Hoopsie's eyes widened in a quiet oh no. Rachel's expression changed. The anger didn't disappear. It crystallized. She stared directly at Joy, her voice soft but razor-edged. You don't get to insult me, then insult the people here trying to support this conversation. Joy opened her mouth, but Rachel continued, her voice rising with new intensity. You call it humor, I call it cruelty. If you can't see the difference, that's not my problem. The audience erupted again, louder this time, with cheers mixed in. Rachel's strength was resonating with them. This wasn't a celebrity meltdown. This was someone setting a boundary that had been crossed too many times. Joy leaned forward now, her voice sharper. You act like I attacked your family. Relax. I said your performance looked personal. That's a compliment. That wasn't a compliment, Rachel said, stepping closer. You didn't compliment me. You cornered me. Sunny raised her hand. Let's slow. But Rachel kept going. You've made a career out of acting like your words don't have weight. But they do, Joy. They hit. They hurt. And you hide behind humor every time someone calls you out. Joy's face flushed red. I'm not hiding. This is what the view is. Tough questions. Hard conversations. Real talk. Rachel didn't blink. Then have a real conversation. Not a cheap shot. The crowd roared with support. Whoopi intervened again, her voice uncharacteristically stern. Joy, Rachel, let's take a breath, both of you. But Joy wasn't stopping either. She looked at the audience, at the cameras, then back at Rachel, and something in her expression shifted, like she realized she was losing control of the narrative. So what? Joy said, you want an apology? Is that what this is? You want me to say sorry so we can all move on? Rachel stared at her, shocked at how unserious that tone was. No, she said slowly. I don't want an apology. I want respect. The words hung in the air. The audience clapped again. Harder. Joy shook her head. You're making a mountain out of a molehill. Stop minimizing me, Rachel said sharply. I didn't come here to be mocked. I didn't come here to be reduced to gossip fodder. You don't get to drag me and then make it my fault for reacting. Joy's eyes narrowed. If you're this sensitive, maybe you shouldn't come on talk shows. Maybe talk shows shouldn't weaponize people's emotions for headlines. Rachel shot back. Boom. The studio erupted. Joy looked caught off guard genuinely. She had expected Rachel to fold, to soften, to step back. But Rachel wasn't folding. She was rising. Sunny swallowed hard before speaking. Maybe we should pivot to the movie. No, Rachel said suddenly, surprising everyone. We're not pivoting. Not until this is acknowledged. Joy threw her hands up. You're unbelievable. Rachel stepped to the table's edge, leaning in. Not aggressively, intentionally, powerfully. You don't get to belittle me and call it a job. You don't get to poke at my life and call it curiosity. And you don't get to hide behind the word sensitive just because I'm not smiling through a question that crossed the line. Joy leaned back, crossing her arms again. You're overreacting. I'm reacting appropriately to being disrespected, Rachel replied. A tense silence followed. Cameras zoomed in. Audience members leaned forward. Producers paced nervously off stage, unsure whether to cut to commercial, intervene, or let this unfold. Everyone knew moments like this went viral, but they also knew they could lose the guest entirely. Whoopi finally stepped in, her patience exhausted. Joy, I'm asking you now. Respectfully, let's shift. Let's let Rachel speak on her terms. Joy paused. Something rare flickered in her expression. Hesitation. The audience noticed. She glanced at them, then at Rachel, then at her co-hosts. She exhaled. All right, Joy said softly. Surprisingly, all right, fine. The room stilled. Rachel blinked, not expecting the sudden crack in Joy's armor. Joy continued, voice quieter. Maybe I pushed too hard. Maybe I said it the wrong way. I didn't mean to make you feel attacked. The audience murmured. It wasn't an apology. Not yet. But it was the closest Joy had come to one. Rachel's shoulders softened slightly, but her eyes stayed sharp. Thank you for saying that. Joy nodded, avoiding Rachel's gaze. Whoopi seized the moment. Okay, let's move forward. Rachel took a breath, steadying herself. She finally returned to her seat, though she didn't lean back. Her posture was upright, alert, ready. Sunny spoke gently. Rachel, tell us what this film means to you. On your terms. Rachel's voice shook for a moment, a human tremor before she steadied it. This film was about healing, about reclaiming yourself after being misunderstood or judged. The audience felt the weight of that. Joy looked down at her cue cards, her expression unreadable. Rachel continued, it's about someone who spent years not speaking up until she finally did. Another wave of applause filled the room. This one deeper, almost cathartic. But even with the tension softening, something still simmered beneath the surface, unresolved, waiting. And before this episode ended, that simmer would boil over again because the calm after the storm was only temporary. The tension in the studio may have softened, but it didn't dissolve. It lingered in the tight air, in the cautious glances between the hosts, in the way Rachel held herself, still alert, still bracing for whatever might come next. Even Joy Behar sat unusually still, flipping through her cue cards with stiff fingers, as if trying to find the exact moment she lost control of the conversation. The producers backstage exchanged looks, whispering urgently into headsets. They recognized the dynamic immediately. Whatever this was, it wasn't over. The conflict had shaped now. Weight, momentum. The kind of invisible heat that any wrong word could reignite. Sunny Hen leaned forward, offering Rachel a gentle bridge into safer territory. So, Rachel, she said softly, you were talking about healing, reclaiming yourself. Can you explain what that looked like for this role? Rachel nodded slowly, choosing her words with careful precision. The character I play, she began, carries years of silence. She's someone who let people dictate her story. When I read the script, it reminded me of how easy it is, especially for women, to be labeled without ever being heard. The audience hummed with agreement. Her voice wasn't just emotional. It was steady, grounded, raw, honest in a way that didn't come often on daytime television. Rachel continued, we're told to smile, to laugh off comments, to be gracious when someone crosses a boundary, to never make others uncomfortable, even when we're hurting. Sunny nodded, visibly moved. Rachel's eyes lifted, landing briefly on Joy. And when we do speak up, we're labeled sensitive, overreacting, unreasonable. Joy stiffened, but she didn't speak. Not yet. The audience felt the weight of those words. It wasn't just an answer. It was a mirror. Rachel exhaled quietly. So this character, she gave me permission to stop shrinking, to stop making myself smaller for other people's comfort. A few audience members applauded softly, respectfully. Whoopi smiled with pride. "That's powerful," she said. "And important," Sunny added. "It shows your performance. It's stunning. Absolutely stunning." Rachel murmured a grateful thank you. But even as the conversation tried to settle into something grounded, everyone could feel the current shifting again. The tension was creeping back into the room, subtle but unmistakable. There was a moment, a tiny fleeting moment, when it seemed the show might recover, might return to its usual rhythm. But then Joy Behar raised her head. She tapped her cue cards against the table, eyes narrowing with a familiar spark. "Well," she said casually, too casually, "if the movie helped you stop shrinking, then maybe this interview is part of that process, too." Sun's head whipped around. Hoopsie's eyebrows shot up. Rachel's shoulders straightened instantly. Joy continued, oblivious or ignoring the silent warnings from both co-hosts. "I mean, you're really telling us how you feel today. Good for you. That's growth." It wasn't the words. It was the tone. Condescending, performative, patronizing. The audience knew it. The hosts knew it. Rachel knew it. A ripple of uncomfortable murmurs slipped through the studio seats. Rachel swallowed, her expression tightening again. "Joy, that sounded." Joy cut her off with a wave. "Oh, don't start. I'm agreeing with you." "No," Rachel said firmly. "You're not." Joy blinked. "Yes, I am." Rachel leaned forward slightly. "Joy, if you're going to compliment me, don't do it like I'm a child who finally learned a lesson." The audience reacted with a low collective. Joy opened her mouth, a retort already forming. At some point you have to." But Rachel didn't let her finish this time. "No," she said sharply. "I'm talking and you're going to let me finish this sentence." The studio erupted. Cheers, applause, shock. Joy froze, stunned at being cut off so directly. It was as if she couldn't quite process someone flipping the script on her in real time. Rachel continued, voice steady but fierce. "You made a hurtful assumption earlier. You crossed a boundary. I confronted you and now you're trying to downplay it with sarcasm. That's not resolution. That's deflection." Joy huffed, leaning back. "This is ridiculous." "Is it?" Rachel asked, eyes locked on her. "Or is it the first time someone has called you out on air and not backed down?" Joy's face hardened. "People call me out all the time." "Not like this," Rachel said softly. The audience gasped. Joy stared at her, eyes narrowing again. "All right. You want real. Fine. I think you're making this entire thing bigger than it needs to be because you're uncomfortable being challenged." Sunani's eyes widened. "Joy." Rachel nodded slowly, absorbing the blow before responding. "Challenged. A challenge is a thoughtful question. What you did was poke at pain for entertainment." Joy threw up her hands. "It's a show. We do entertainment." Rachel's voice rose. "There's entertainment and then there's disrespect. You chose disrespect." The tension snapped tight again. You could almost hear the heartbeat of the room. Joy leaned in aggressively. "Then maybe you should stick to scripted interviews where nobody pushes your buttons." Rachel didn't flinch. "Maybe you should learn the difference between pushing buttons and crossing lines." The audience exploded into applause. Wild, supportive, electrified. Whoopi stepped in again, voice raised. "All right, ladies. Let's." But Joy wasn't listening. She pointed a finger toward Rachel. "You're acting like I attacked you personally." Rachel stared at that pointed finger with a calm that was somehow scarier than anger. "You did." Joy rolled her eyes dramatically. "Oh, please don't roll your eyes at me." Rachel shot back. The audience gasped loudly. That one hit hard. Joy froze mid-roll, realizing how disrespectful it looked on camera. Rachel continued, voice low and unshakably steady. "All my life I've been trained to laugh things off, to be polite, to not make a scene. But you know what? I'm done smiling through things that hurt." Joy muttered under her breath. You're doing a scene now. All right. Another eruption of mixed reactions filled the studio. Gasps, whispers, even some shocked laughter. Rachel's face hardened, but she didn't break. She didn't let her voice waver. "You know what's funny, Joy?" she asked quietly. Joy hesitated. "What?" Rachel stepped closer, her expression painfully honest, vulnerable, but strong. "For years I admired you," she said. "I thought you were fearless, brilliant, sharp. But today, I realized your sharpness sometimes cuts people instead of cutting into conversation." A hush swept through the audience. Even Joy's expression faltered just for a second. Rachel continued. "And maybe you don't see it. Maybe you think it's just your style, but it hurts. And you don't get to tell people when they are allowed to feel hurt." Joy swallowed hard, visibly shaken. Rachel stepped back, giving space. "That's all I wanted to say." The studio sat in stunned silence. No applause, no gasps, just the weight of truth sitting heavy in the air. Whoopi cleared her throat. "We should probably go to commercial." But before she could finish, Joy spoke again quietly, unexpectedly. "Rachel," she said, "I didn't realize." Rachel looked at her, surprised. Joy continued, voice softer than it had been all episode. "I didn't mean for it to land like that. It wasn't an apology. Not fully, but it was the first genuine crack in Joy's armor." Rachel nodded once. "Thank you." Whoopi seized the moment. Commercial. Now the music played. The screen faded. The studio lights dimmed. And for the first time since the conflict ignited, Joy and Rachel were left without cameras. Just two women sitting at a table breathing the same thick air, their emotions raw and unfiltered. But the break did not fix everything, because what happened during the commercial break would send the entire studio into a spiral. When the cameras cut to commercial, the studio fell into a tense, suspended quiet, the kind of quiet that isn't peaceful. It's charged. Producers rushed in immediately, whispering frantic directions, their voices trembling with urgency. But Rachel and Joy didn't move. They sat frozen at the table, not speaking, not looking at each other, just existing in the heavy aftermath of everything that had been said. Sunny leaned back, exhaling a breath she had been holding for far too long. Whoopi rubbed her temples, whispering something under her breath that sounded like, "Lord, give me strength." Joy broke the silence first. She cleared her throat, glancing sideways at Rachel. "Listen, Rachel, what I said earlier." Rachel didn't look at her. She stared straight at the empty audience seats, the lights dimming enough that her reflection in the teleprompter stared right back at her. "I heard you," she said coolly. "And I'm processing it." Joy nodded, relieved at the neutral tone. "Good, because I wasn't trying to." Rachel cut in softly. "Joy, stop, please." Joy blinked, startled. "I'm just trying to explain." Rachel finished for her. "I know, but explanations aren't the same as accountability." Joy's expression hardened. "Accountability," she repeated slowly, as if tasting the word. "I think you're reading a lot into a question." "A question with intent," Rachel said quietly. Joy huffed. "Everyone's got feelings these days." Rachel finally turned her head. "Feelings aren't the problem. Dismissing them is." Sunny looked between them nervously. "Guys," but it was too late. The conversation, fragile and private, was tipping again. Joy leaned forward. "Rachel, if you feel hurt, I'm sorry, but don't make me the villain here." Rachel stared at her. Really stared. "Joy, you made yourself the villain." Joy inhaled sharply. "Wow, wow." "Because I'm telling the truth," Rachel replied. "Not because I'm exaggerating. Not because I'm emotional." She paused. "Just honest." Joyce scoffed. "You know what? Fine. Think what you want, but don't act like you didn't escalate this." Rachel blinked, baffled. "I escalated this." "You did," Joy said firmly. "I asked a question. You made it personal." "It was personal," Rachel said, voice rising. "According to you," Joy fired back. "You implied my performance wasn't acting, that it was a confession, a revelation, something I wasn't ready to talk about publicly." Joy shrugged. "People love hearing personal stories." Rachel's eyes widened. "They love authenticity, Joy, not exploitation." Joy's mouth opened, ready to retort. But for the first time in the entire encounter, Sunny intervened forcefully. "Enough," she snapped, slamming her palm onto the table. The studio froze. Even the producers stopped moving. "Both of you," Sunny said, breathing hard. "Stop talking past each other. Stop twisting what the other one said, and stop acting like the other person is your enemy." Joy looked stunned. Rachel did too. Sunny continued. "You hurt her, Joy. Whether you meant to or not doesn't erase the impact," Joy stilled. "And Rachel," Sunny added, turning gently. "She's defensive because she knows she crossed a line. You're both still reacting emotionally." Rachel's eyes softened faintly. Sunny leaned back. "We're all human. We all mess up, but right now, you're hurting each other more than helping." Joy crossed her arms, stubborn. "I still don't think." Before she could finish, a stage manager burst into the circle. 30 seconds. "We're back in 30. All four women stiffened. Their faces shifted instantly. Professional masks sliding back into place, though crackled at the edges. Shadows of the real emotions beneath. Joyce stayed down at the table. Rachel looked toward the cameras, breathing slowly, preparing herself. Sunny straightened her cards. Whoopi lifted her chin and muttered, "Lord, help us all." The countdown began over the intercom. 10, 9, 8. Joy whispered without looking up. "Rachel, I didn't mean to hurt you." Rachel whispered back, eyes still on the camera. "I know, but you did." 3, 2, 1. The cameras flashed on, the lights sharpened, the theme music faded, and the world watched as the show resumed. Whoopi's voice came first, warm but tight. "We're back with Rachel McAdams discussing her new film." Rachel smiled, small, composed, still emotionally threaded with everything that had just happened. Joy remained mostly silent, nodding, avoiding direct eye contact. Her earlier sharpness dissolved into something more complicated. Sunny picked up the conversation, guiding Rachel into talking about the film's themes, the humanity behind the character, the emotional depth she brought to the role. Rachel answered with grace, though there was a tremor beneath her voice. A strength, but a wounded one, and the audience felt every beat of it. Eventually, Joy spoke. Not a joke, not a jab, but a simple, sincere line. "You really put your heart into this," she said quietly. Rachel looked over surprised. Joy continued, "And I respect that. It wasn't an apology, but it was something." Rachel nodded once gently. "Thank you." The audience applauded, sensing the significance. But just when it seemed like the tension had smoothed into a fragile truce, the real explosion happened, not on the show, but the moment the episode ended. Because when the cameras cut off after the final segment, the studio audience began shouting. It started small, one voice calling out, "Rachel, we love you." Then another. Joy was out of line. Producers panicked as the audience erupted into mixed cheers, arguments, shouts of support for Rachel, and criticism of Joy. Security stepped in to maintain order as the energy surged into something chaotic, electric, uncontrollable. Joy's face dropped as she heard the audience's reaction. She looked shaken, really shaken. Rachel's eyes widened at the intensity. She tapped her hand on the table nervously. Sunny whispered, "Oh God." Within minutes, clips of the confrontation, even the off tension from lip readers in the audience, were already hitting social media on Twitter. Hashtag Rachel McAdams, hashtag Joy Behar, hashtag The View Blow Up, hashtag Talks How Chaos. Millions of views before Rachel made it back to her dressing room. TikTok edits of Rachel standing up for herself began trending instantly. Users posted captions like "Rachel McAdams didn't come to play." "She ate Joy Behar up on national TV." "Protect Rachel at all costs." Meanwhile, Joy's mentions were flooded. Some defended her. Many did not. Backstage, Joyce sat on the makeup chair, staring at her reflection. For once, she didn't have a joke. No sarcastic line, no comeback, just silence. In her dressing room, Rachel sat on the couch, hands trembling slightly, exhaustion washing over her. Not because she regretted speaking up, but because she finally realized just how deeply she'd been holding those boundaries inside. Sunny knocked on her door. "You okay?" she asked gently. Rachel nodded. "Yay, I think I finally am." Back in the hallway, producers scrambled, already planning damage control. Joint statements, press releases, talking points. But the internet had already written its own story. Rachel McAdams, calm, composed, and fiercely honest, had gone viral for standing up for herself. And Joy Behar, well, she had become the villain of the episode, whether she meant to or not. A week later, the clip became one of the most watched moments in The View's recent history. News anchors discussed it. Fans analyzed it. Podcasts broke it down frame by frame, and through it all, the world kept repeating the same question. Was Joy out of line? Or did Rachel finally say what so many guests have felt for years? Rachel later addressed it in an interview, saying, "Speaking up doesn't mean conflict, it means clarity, and I needed clarity that day." As for Joy, she eventually delivered a more formal apology on air. Direct, clear, unflinching. "I crossed a line, and Rachel called me on it. I respect her for that." The audience applauded, and for once, Joy didn't deflect. She just took it. But the internet never forgot the moment Rachel's voice cracked the studio wide open. A moment of truth, a moment of courage, a moment of refusing to shrink. Now the echo of that moment belongs to you, the viewer, to decide what it meant, what it revealed, and who was truly in the right. So now it's your turn. Tell your thoughts in the comments. Whose side are you on? What shocked you the most? And what would you have done in Rachel's place? Make sure you hit subscribe for more explosive, emotional, and dramatic deep dives into the most unforgettable moments on television.